Is we'll record John's presentation, and then once our presentation is done, we will turn off the recording so we can have a more informal Q&A and encourage everybody to bring in their questions. So again, welcome. I am Melanie Blake. I'm the Director of Classical Pursuits, and I'm here today with my colleague Susan Couture, and of course John Harris, our author, who's going to talk with us about his beautiful new book published by Heyday Press in Berkeley. The book is a portrait in red, a Paris obsession, and we're going to get to John in just a moment. Before we do, for those of you who are new in the audience, I'd like to briefly introduce Classical Pursuits to you. We organize tours and small group seminars for people who are passionate about literature and the arts. We do a lot in Paris, which is, and John, I know you've known about some of our previous Paris tours and Paris programs, and as those of you who know John know that he has a Paris obsession that goes beyond the portrait in red, and just makes sense for us to do these collaborations. And we thought this would be a fun program to do for the holiday and inspire you to perhaps, as a gift for yourself or for someone else, get John's lovely book. It makes a really wonderful holiday gift for anybody who is interested in Paris or art history, or just serendipity, which I always really which is one of the things that I really like, the process of serendipity emerging in John's journey that he's going to tell you about. And if as I mentioned, Classical Pursuits, we have a long history of running programs in Paris. Our next one is our May 2025 tour, Art and Resistance in World War II Paris and Champagne. We have just 2 and possibly 1 spaces left on this tour. It is going to feature a couple of really some other top-notch authors who are based in Paris, leading custom walks for us, and we're going to learn about both the history of World War I from an art perspective, specifically all the art that was taken by the Nazis and the German army, stolen from all over France and all over Europe, and funneled through Paris's Jeu de Paume Museum. So that is the anchor of our theme, and we're going to explore from there the history of the occupation of Paris, and then going into Champagne, the role that this region played in World War II, and of course to enjoy some champagne and the beautiful countryside of that area from our base in Reims, which is a really lovely city with a cathedral, a truly glorious cathedral, even a little bit longer, if I'm not mistaken, than Notre Dame, and just a true wonder to behold. So that's just one example of a tour that we have coming up. I'll put in the chat the link to that tour and the link to our website in general if you'd like to check out more of our programs. And we have a special code for 20% off John's book that Heyday has very generously offered. So we'll make sure to get that code to you in the follow-up email that we send after this program, so you can support local publishing, support a longtime Berkeley publisher, support John and all his hard work, and offer a great gift to your friends and family. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we will get started with John's presentation. Just adjust my settings here. Okay. And let me just get the full slideshow going for you. And John, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome so much to you, John Harris, an author, filmmaker, a musician, guitar collector, owner of a historic Bernard Maybeck house in Berkeley. You for many years, you've done a lot of things. Those of you who have been with us before may remember John talking about his Paris Cafe Culture book, a lovely illustrated book about the history of his own experience in Paris cafes, with a little bit of history of those cafes thrown in. His Plague Journal, also featuring lots of illustrations that demonstrate the humor, sadness, and absurdity of our time during the pandemic. And now, most recently, Portrait in Red. So, John, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you all for being here, and thanks Classical Pursuits for giving me this opportunity to present my book to this art-loving crowd. You can tell I'm reading, which gets me through a lot of material much more quickly and concisely and without forgetting anything. Now, although I'm not a professional art critic or art historian, I hope my journey with the girl in red is both the title of the painting is The Girl in Red. The title of the book is Portrait in Red. So I hope my journey with the painting is both entertaining and informative about this particular work of art and art in general. I've been an on and off again artist since art school in the 1960s, and I'm just starting to understand what art is about, which, spoiler alert, it's a process, not a thing. So my book is the account of what I've come to believe about art, colored by the theories I've come across while writing the book of art historians, philosophers, psychologists, neuroscientists, and artists themselves. All of this began with the discovery of an anonymous painting found in Paris, discarded on a sidewalk in 2015. The canvas is dated January 12th, 1935, in the upper right-hand corner of the canvas. And the allure of the image and date enchanted me, triggering an obsessive multi-year mission to understand everything about the painting, its artist, sitter, former owner, and the circumstances surrounding its creation as World War II loomed on the horizon. 1935 was a pivotal year along the path leading to war. I like Marcel Duchamp's quote here, his belief that through the arts we can connect to regions beyond time and space, and that this is a province unique to humans. Duchamp distinguishes between belief and knowledge. The province of art is not knowledge. That's science's domain. Art takes us beyond the limits of time and space, the material world of science. Perhaps one can describe this world best as imagination, though the greatest discoveries in science are often preceded by the scientist's imaginative and intuitive experiences. Nevertheless, the viewer of art joins the artist in that imaginative, experiential realm. This is not true in the sciences. We share the imaginative breakthroughs of scientists through the everyday application of their discoveries. Art, at least the art we know today, has no everyday application, and hence the 19th century's controversial idea of art for art's sake, which I believe is true today as well. Let me describe for a moment the chronological structure of my book. There are 43 chapters in 3 sections. Section 1 is The Journey Begins. It covers 2015 through 2016, from July to July. Section 2, The Journey Continues. It covers a period of several weeks in 2016 after returning to Paris to continue the search. Section 3, The Journey Ends, covers the last months of 2016 and parts of 2017, when I finished the first draft of the book. FYI, there are almost 100 color images in the book, mostly photos I took in Paris on my journey, plus several historical paintings that relate to the text, and a few drawings and collages of my own that help illustrate my story. A final fourth section of the book, the epilogue, has 7 sections and covers the years 2022 through 2023, 5 years after I finished the first version of the book and failed to sell it. During the gap between 2017 and 2022, I published 2 illustrated memoirs, as Melanie alluded to, one Café French, the other my COVID diary, my little plague journal. Starting up again then in 2022, I returned to what was originally titled The Girl in Red to continue the search, expand the book, and finish my journey once and for all. Good luck. Slide 2. Melanie. There you go. So it all started with The Woman in Gold by Gustav Klimt. I was on my way to Paris in July of 2015 to write about the Paris classic bar and cafe sandwich, the Croque Monsieur, for my magazine, the online food journal Zester Daily. I decided to stop in New York to see Klimt's painting at the Nuit Gallery after seeing the powerful film Woman in Gold about the painting's return to its owners after having been stolen by the Nazis decades earlier. I also wanted to taste, I must confess, the apple strudel at the Nuit Gallery's famous Viennese-style cafe. Even as a food writer and cookbook publisher since the 1970s, I have kept a hand in the art world, but my first love, of course, of food and art led to illustrated articles for Zester, which was a perk that they allowed me in lieu of, I would say, a reasonable payment for my work. I got to at least illustrate my own articles, which was a great pleasure and an opportunity. Now about the quote in this slide. A major theme in my book relates to Walter Benjamin's theory of the aura, the powerful presence of an original image compared to a copy. I first encountered Benjamin, the early 20th century German Marxist Jewish philosopher and literary and art critic, when researching his view of the Paris flaneur, the wandering observer of urban Paris, often an artist or poet or journalist. The Parisian cafe was home to creatives of all kinds since the 18th century, and the incognito 19th century flaneur specialized in watching Paris's urbanization unfold. When I stumbled across the discarded portrait of a young girl, I was following in the footsteps of Benjamin's flaneur, and the painting's aura captured me. I will read now a section from the book. It's a little further into the book. I realize how connected the painting, which I immediately named The Girl in Red, is in my mind to Klimt's Woman in Gold. Quote, although I have not fully digested all the connections between Woman in Gold and The Girl in Red, with just a few days in Paris under my belt, they are coming into focus. 2 portraits, 2 young females, both with full red lips and soulful eyes, painted in 2 great cities, Vienna and Paris, where the Nazis would soon destroy vibrant Jewish communities and devour fabulous art collections. It is impossible not to acknowledge the sad serendipity that has brought these 2 very distinct, yet uncannily connected images into life. Unquote. Slide 3. Finding the Girl. My first day in Paris that summer took me to La Palette Cafe in the 6th arrondissement on the chic Rue de Seine. The street is lined with art galleries and is only blocks from the legendary École des Beaux-Arts. I had my first croque, took notes and photos, and set out to flaneur my way to my apartment in the 7th, when, at the corner of Rue Guénégaud and Rue Mazarine, I saw a pile of discarded items, typical in Paris, but untypical in Paris, a small portrait of a girl with a red head cover, seemingly unfinished, was leaning against the pile. I felt like she was looking at me. I stopped dead in my tracks, picked it up, studied it for several minutes, ruminated on it for several minutes more, and took it home. What went through my mind as I studied the painting is contained in the book's prologue. Even the guilt I felt carrying the image off. This was the beginning of my 9-year journey. Now there is a quote by Edgar Degas. Quote, he says, "We were created to look at one another, weren't we?" Unquote. I think this quote captures something often underappreciated about our human condition. The fact that looking at each other is at the very foundation of our culture and even our survival. The baby and the mother looking at each other, bonding at birth. And much about our art is all about this basic fact, whether through the visual arts, literature, theater, or dance. Music seems to be the exception. It's not focused outward, it's focused inward. We often listen to music with our eyes closed. All other art forms are experienced eyes wide open. About the photos in the slide, well, there's the croque monsieur that I had. It was served open-faced on high-end sourdough poilâne bread, not the typical pain de mie white bread. My search for good croques and the article I was researching, excuse me, is a theme that runs through the entire book. But my professional foodie identity was slowly and unbeknownst to me at first, being taken over by an obsession with a painting. The map has a red circle, which is the exact location where the painting was found, in front of an apartment building at 35 Rue Guénégaud. So the picture there of that apartment door is 35 Rue Guénégaud. There was a pile of junk leaning next to the door, just to the right. There are art galleries on both sides of the building, neither of which, when I went to them, recognized the painting. I was so stunned by the painting that I failed to take a picture of it or the pile of junk that surrounded it. Slide 4. Not the Mona Lisa. Back at the apartment, I placed the canvas on the mantle in the salon in front of a large mirror. I was interested in the canvas as a three-dimensional object, not just a two-dimensional image. I am more a collector of objects, guitars, antique furniture, sculpture, than of paintings. I also started, ironically, of course, to compare the girl in red to Leonardo's Mona Lisa. They are both two-dimensional images of a female face, but also historical objects. One enshrined behind bulletproof glass at the Louvre, and the other enshrined now behind UV-coated glass on the wall of my living room in Berkeley. About the quote from Walter Pater. Walter Pater's famous description of the Mona Lisa is a metaphorical evocation of the Mona Lisa's magical, timeless presence. The girl in red has a similar quality, I believe. She has been lost for over 90 years, perhaps hidden in someone's closet, but now, like the Mona Lisa, she is back from the grave. Slide 5. Meet Aura's cousin, Patina. In this chapter of the book, I make the connection between metaphysical aura and physical patina. Being a collector of old guitars, as well as all physical objects, I appreciate how time affects the materials of guitars and objects of all sorts. A book I had read sometime after its publication in 2010, Edmund de Waal's The Hare with Amber Eyes, had, like the film Woman in Gold, a huge effect on me. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold. Again, the Holocaust theme inserts itself into my book through de Waal's comment that stories, like the stories of his family's horrible losses during the Holocaust, can have a patina as well as objects, literary patina. Playing with the concept of patina, I subjected the girl to a digital aging process that gave her the physical look of age that added, somewhat parodically perhaps, to her Benjaminian aura as a one-of-a-kind authentic object. Silly perhaps, and someone commented to me on Facebook that it looked more like grime and slime than patina. Well, the oxidation process that creates actual patina on metals and woods is not exactly a clean coat of fresh paint. One man's grime and slime is another's sublime. I'm going to read from a page, quote, I love the aging surfaces of old oil paintings, the crackling texture caused by the differential drying out of paint and varnish, called craquelure, and the slight darkening or yellowing or fading of the painting's pigments and varnishes over time. For me, these elements of patina, literal and literary, are the visual and emotional cues of time passing, and combined with aura, offer clues to my deep attraction to the girl in red. Slide 6. Heureux Hazard and Yuri Cooper at La Palette. Several days after I found the girl in red, I found Yuri Cooper, a celebrated contemporary artist from Russia, who was hanging out in several of my cafe haunts in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Meeting Yuri was, well, magical. The connections that would reveal themselves between me, Yuri, the girl in red, and several of the main characters and themes in the book can only be described as synchronistic, or to use the term I began using after meeting him, the French term heureux hasard, or happy chance. Yuri would not only confirm the quality of the painting, but through him and his former art dealer in Paris, would connect me with several other key characters in the book, including Robert Flynn Johnson, a curator and collector in San Francisco, and Peter Sells, the late Peter Sells, the art historian and founding director of the Berkeley Art Museum in the 1960s, that I knew both of these characters already, and that they had written the co-introductions to Yuri's catalog for a major museum show at Moscow's Pushkin Museum in 1995 made this more than mere coincidence. The thing about heureux hasard is that it is not a matter of provable knowledge, but of belief, as Marcel Duchamp points out about art's ability to take us to dimensions beyond time and space. Meeting Yuri delivered me into a Paris that was like the surreal Paris in Woody Allen's film Midnight in Paris. The difference is that Allen's story was fiction. My Midnight in Paris was real. Now, about the painting on the screen, Yuri Geller. Well, I once wrote about Yuri Geller. Yuri Cooper's painting Garlic from 1998. I must confess that when a major artist, considered by many, including Peter Sells and Robert Johnson, the finest Russian painter of the second half of the 20th century, when he focuses his magical realism on a still life portrait of garlic bulbs, it is hard for me, the author of a book celebrating the humble bulb, the Book of Garlic, not to be seduced. More fuel for the flames of Heureux Hazard. Slide 7. Leaving Paris with the painting that I had taken off the stretcher bars and rolled up in a tube, my next stop was London to catch my flight home. Another eruption of Heureux Hazard presented itself at a show at the Courtauld Gallery, spotlighting their collection of unfinished art. I had been struggling with the idea that the girl could be unfinished and yet still valuable and powerful. Any prejudice against unfinished art was annihilated by the show at the Courtauld, and then a few months later at another major show on unfinished art at the Met Breuer in New York, formerly the Whitney, which I flew to New York to see. These shows reinforce the idea of art as a process or journey, not a destination. And the viewer joins the process and completes the work. I also began to see in London and then in New York that my journey with the girl in red was just beginning. These events confirmed that I had tuned into something through the girl in red that was unfolding, and I was just a participant on a journey I don't fully control. Here's a quote from the book. It seems clear then that a work of visual art, finished or not, is not created as a fixed event in time with a set duration, a beginning, a middle, and end, as is, say, a meal at a restaurant. When you are done, the plate's empty, the meal is definitely, unambiguously terminé, or in Italian, finito. In the culinary arts, you can have seconds, but never again firsts. Creating an oil painting is then more like an explorer's voyage across an ocean with an unknown destination, duration, and arrival time. Picasso, in a film about the making of Guernica, says, quote, "A painting is not thought out and settled in advance. While it is being done, it changes as one's thoughts change." Slide 8. By the way, those two images in the previous slide were seen at the shows at the right. Actually, the Michelangelo is a painting that was used by his students to practice finishing a painting in his style, and also the Da Vinci on the right, to me, reminded me of the girl in red with the face kind of isolated from an unfinished surrounding, but still very, very powerful. Back to slide 8. Paris, January 12th, 1935. If the date was the only solid information I had about the painting, I wanted to know more about what was happening on that day in Paris. Because of the size of the date scrawled on the canvas, I imagined that the date was the artist, serving as a channel for all that was happening on that day in the life of this child. There was a lot going on in 1935 as Germany secretly prepared for war. The Saar plebiscite was on January 13th, the next day, and the population of this coal-rich German region on the northeast border of France, taken from Germany after World War I, would vote to reintegrate with Germany, giving it what it needed to wage war in Europe. There was also a huge storm moving through France on January 12th, and Paris was blanketed with snow. An ad in the local paper for a cough syrup, Syrup Vert Cadet, showed children romping in the snow. They are wearing caps, and I imagined that my girl in red could have been one of the kids in that ad. Perhaps she was playing in the snow that day and came home late for her portrait, forcing the artist to stop short of a fully detailed portrait, complete with her clothing and a background. I'll read now from the book. Quote, perhaps the scrawled date is the artist's signature, and this particular day in 1935 can be viewed as the painter of the canvas, as if the individual wielding the brush is merely a channel for all that is happening on this day in Paris, in the world, and of course, in the artist and model too. Isn't this what representational painting is? A picture of everything all at once on a two-dimensional surface. A photograph freezes the moment with a mechanical lens, a snapshot. A painting allows the viewer to experience in the surface of the painting a more expansive and evolving time and place as it happens. Or as the French novelist and art theorist André Malraux put it, quote, a work of art is an object, but it is also an encounter with time. Slide 9. Gleaning 101. One commentator on an early posting about the girl on Facebook mentioned that my story reminded her of the film by the French filmmaker Agnes Varda, one of the great new wave auteurs who emerged in Paris in the 1960s. Varda's film, The Gleaners and I, documented every imaginable version of the gleaning, from the classic of gleaning, the word gleaning, from the classical definition of peasants collecting wheat left in the fields after harvest, to artists salvaging junk to use in their sculptures. Varda has single-handedly expanded the concept of gleaning, similarly to Edmond de Waal's expanding the concept of patina. And I'll read from the book. Varda explores the phenomenon of gleaning to reveal it as a profound human construct and a more diverse activity than its narrow dictionary definition would suggest. On the basis of her film, you could describe the human species as Homo glaneur. When I bent down and stooped to pick up an abandoned painting, I was performing an act no less fundamental than the gleaner stooping to pick up wheat left in the field after the harvest in Jean-Francois Millet's Barbizon School masterpiece, Les Glaneuses, the inspiration for Varda's film, unquote. Note that the two gleaners in the Millet, one has a red head cover, the other a blue, which you'll see is relevant in a slide that follows. Next slide. Unlikely complicities. Dora Bruder, Nadja, and the girl in red. My obsession with the mystery of a young girl is not a unique literary phenomenon, though it can be controversial, even pathological, as with Nabokov's Lolita. My readings in 2016 of two novels, one by the Nobel laureate Patrick Modiano, Dora Bruder, and one by the surrealist icon André Breton, Nadja, put me into a deeper relationship with the girl in red and cast my mission into a more literary, psychological, and metaphysical light. Common to all three books, mine, Modiano's, and Breton's, is the strange power of a girl's gaze that sparks the imagination and, in my case at least, connects me to some shadowy feminine dimension of my psyche, perhaps Carl Jung's anima. I'll read from the book. All the speculation about the meaning of the girl in red in my life tends to obscure the stunning possibility that the real girl in the painting could conceivably be alive today, today being 2015. She would be about 90 years old now if 10 in 1935. Was she Jewish? Was she French or Russian, as some have suggested, based on the details of her sketched clothing and her red head cover? Did Modiano's Dora, born in 1926 and 9 years old in 1935, pass my girl in the streets of Paris in the 1930s? Could they have attended the same schools, played in the same parks, dated the same boys? And Breton's Nadja, actually Leona Camille Griselaine Delacour, born in 1902 and about 25 years old when Breton met her in Paris. She would have been about 33 years old in 1935. Did she pass Dora and my girl in the streets, cafes, and parks of Paris after being released from the sanatorium Breton mentions? Unquote. Slide 11.
Sorry.
Postering Paris, an installation project. When I decided to return to Paris the summer after finding the girl to continue my search, I did so in the context of a mission to install wanted posters, les avis de recherche, all around Ground Zero with the hope of uncovering information about the painting. So in the center picture of this slide, you'll see the poster with, in French, a request for information leading to the identification of the painting, and my email address at the bottom. The three images here show the poster and two of the dozens of mounting locations: the Delacroix House Museum and Café Le Mazarin, which was across the street from Ground Zero. Not everyone agreed that this was worth my effort. Most notably, the brilliant San Francisco curator-collector Robert Johnson, former head of the Achenbach print collection at San Francisco's Fine Arts Museum. As the author of a book celebrating anonymous images of the past, titled Anonymous: Enigmatic Images from Unknown Photographers, Robert advised me just to accept the girl as she is, beautifully painted, emotionally evocative, and anonymous. I'll read here from an exchange I had with him. I was in Paris, he was in San Francisco, so this is an email exchange. Quote, I think about Robert Johnson's challenge to my Paris project in an email exchange just before my flight to London. Quote, he says, you have the work, a thoughtful little girl. You have the date it was done, January 12th, 1935. You do not know who made it. You do not even know if it was made in Paris, or even if it is French, but one can assume it is. Embrace the mystery, John. Otherwise, you are implying that the work is somehow lacking. Unquote. I agree with Robert, whom I have dubbed the Apostle of the Anonymous. I do embrace the painting as it is, without benefit of provenance and official art world status, let alone commercial value. The girl, finished or not, lacks nothing. It is complete, but I am not. Something is pushing me forward, as it has from the beginning. I replied to Robert, quote, I am a journalist, not an art critic or curator. I tell stories. Next slide. Meet up with Picasso and Balzac. There's a quote there from Balzac's novella, The Unknown Masterpiece. And then I put the poster at the base of his the Rodin monument to Balzac on Boulevard Raspail. Some of my poster postings had a huge emotional impact on me. Picasso has been a hero of mine since childhood, as with most artists of my generation, the quintessential 20th century artist genius. So placing a poster at his residence near Ground Zero, where he painted Guernica in 1937, was a big deal for me. It happens to be an address featured in Balzac's novella, The Unknown Masterpiece, a story about an old artist, Master Frenhofer, who is losing his talent and mind, that Picasso identified with, as did Cézanne, Matisse, and others. For Picasso, living at an address associated with Balzac was inspirational at a time when he had just returned to painting after a year-long hiatus caused by self-doubt, depression, and forebodings over the looming war. My posting at Balzac's monument by Rodin on Boulevard Raspail, after posting at Picasso's residence on Rue des Grands Augustins, was, in my mind, injecting the girl into the narrative of these great artists, even if only for a few days or weeks. Now I'll read from the book. Quote, "There was a magic for Picasso at number 7, the address of a character, the painter François Pourbou, in Balzac's novella Le Chef d'œuvre inconnu, The Unknown Masterpiece, an allegorical tale that explores the subject of mimesis in pictorial art, representing or bringing to life on canvas the artist's subject. Seeing himself in Balzac's artist protagonist, the aging Master Frenhofer, who was obsessed with the reproducing on canvas his courtesan and model, Catherine Lescaut, Picasso was delighted to be living at this address, discovered by Dora Maar. He had already illustrated a deluxe edition of Balzac's novella in the 1920s, and now he would be living in rooms associated with Balzac's legendary artist. The plaque above the poster next to the gate tells you that Picasso painted Guernica at that address. Slide 13. My Mona Lisa versus the Mona Lisa. In this chapter, I set out to produce a college-level compare and contrast essay that explores the similarities and dissimilarities between art history's perhaps greatest portrait and My Girl in Red. As absurd as this may seem, it was for me an interesting exercise. What are the factors that make the Mona Lisa worth billions and my anonymous portrait only hundreds, perhaps someday thousands? Is it only the gap in the technical brilliance of a Renaissance masterpiece and my more humble 20th century portrait? Or is it the fame of the Mona Lisa boosted by the international notoriety of the painting's theft in 1915? Or is it the anonymity of the girl, her lack of authorship and provenance? Or is it her age, less than 100 years old? I'll read now from the book. At the end of my student essay, I speculate on the future of the girl and its value over time. Quote, "It will take another few hundred years to see what will become of the girl in red, the object, and the painting. Will she, like her much older Renaissance sister, enter our cultural spectacle? Will she be displayed in a museum church, the Louvre as a museum church, worshipped by adoring crowds? Will her image be appropriated for an online museum catalog filled with merch, quote, merch, posters, coffee mugs, and t-shirts? Will she become known as the Mona Lisa of Berkeley? Stay tuned. The slides quote by Aquavella Gallery's Michael Finley is a rare expression these days of the value of art being something more than mere financial value and investment potential. But it's good to know that some art world pros still believe in a broader world of value in the arts, beyond the parameters of the almighty dollar. Next slide, 14. I think my voice is gonna make it to the end. The end of the story. Another moment of Heureux Hasard arrives towards the end of the book. Gallery Mag, the famed gallery in Paris, they opened a San Francisco branch in 2016, the Jules Mag Gallery, right around the corner from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, where I work with my guitar collection. When I saw the sign over the door, I was amazed. The Paris original is right around the corner from my apartment in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. What are the chances that this gallery would be the one Paris gallery that opens near where I work in San Francisco? Wandering in, I engage a man behind the counter who turns out to be the grandson of the founder of the gallery in Paris, Jules Mag. This was the gallery in the mid-20th century that represented Picasso, Matisse, Dubuffet, Calder, and many others. Monsieur Mag advises me to show the painting to a small but well-respected auction house in Paris that might be able to help me identify the artist. He didn't believe I would have any luck getting the attention of Christie's or Sotheby's. So I will read to you here the response from the email from Piazza, the auction house, dated February 12th, 2017. Dear Sir, thank you for your message. Unfortunately, in the absence of a signature, this picture could be attributed to quite a lot of artists. The style suggests, in my opinion, artists of the group Force Nouvelle, in particular Robert Humblot. Sincerely, Stéphane Correard Piazza. Well, I don't think Humblot comes close, but learning about a group, Force Nouvelle, was an important new avenue to explore in my provenance search, though by 2017, my journey was coming to an end and my manuscript almost finished, or so I thought. I think what the Humlo shows is the strong black outline of the face and the flatness of the image, very modern, but representational, and not atypical of a group of artists in the 30s, the Force Nouvelle, that were rejecting abstraction, surrealism, cubism, and trying to return to a more classical style of painting. Slide 15, epilogue. The girl in red meets the girl in blue. Between 2017, when I finished and tried to sell the book, and 2022, when I reconnected with it, I wrote and published 2 illustrated memoirs, and then working on the girl again, determined to enlarge it and get it published. I found myself blissfully back in the land of Heureux Hasard. New material emerged, some of it astounding. A new section of the expanded book, the epilogue, comments looking backwards at the events of 2015 and 16, but also chronicles the latest eruptions of Heureux Hasard. One of them, the reappearance of a soul sister for my girl in red, the girl in blue, brings me to another possible lead on a possible artist working in Paris in the 30s, but also identifies an artist's commune in Paris, La Ruche, that may very well have been the home of the girl's artist. In my notes for a screenplay about the girl in red, included in the book, this home to artists like Chagall, Soutine, Leger, Brancusi, and many other notables, many Russian, many Jewish, many identified as degenerate by the Nazis by 1935, is where much of the action of the film would take place. Perhaps the girl in red went to have her portrait painted by an artist at La Ruche, whoever it was. Now, when I posted the girl in red on a wall at the corner of Rue de Seine and Rue Visconti in 2016, I was surprised to find a few days later that another poster showing the image of a girl with a blue head cover had been placed next to mine, almost touching it. This poster was an advertisement for a new exhibit by the artist Ekaterina Erestova, a Russian artist working in Paris. A week or so later, the same girl in blue poster appeared next to mine in Café Mazarin. I vowed then to go to the show and talk to the artist about the two side-by-side girls, but never did. Then in 2022, while working again on the book, I contacted Aristova, and here is her response in very good English. August 13th, 2022. Dear Mr. Harris, thank you for your message. Such a surprise. It's a pleasure reading you. That was her English word for hearing from you. I don't think the artist of your lovely painting was part of Horse Nouvelle. I would suppose an artist involved at La Ruche, or even the Russian artist Zenaida Serebrikova. Your girl in red is very similar to her unfinished style and love for red color accents. She used to paint her daughters Katya and Tanya, and in the 1930s, she was very active here in France. Please send me a copy of the book. Greetings from Paris, Ekaterina. Well, this precipitated a connection with Ekaterina that continues today. I am on her website and Instagram page, as is the girl in red, and she is in my book and now in my PowerPoint presentation. We soon agreed that her suggested artist was not the painter of the girl's portrait, the reason being that the style of the numbers and dates don't match in the two artists' signatures. Um, um, but more importantly, and perhaps, we are connected now and plan to meet in Paris this coming spring, visit La Ruche together, and continue the dialogue. And who knows, the search will continue. Sorry for the garble there. Slide 16, please. The journey continues, an appendix. At the end of the epilogue, I conclude an appendix with one entry, the response to my submission of information about the girl in red to the Art Loss Register in London late in 2022 as I was working on the final edits of the manuscript. A formal certificate arrived from Art Loss Register in January of 2023, just in time to be included in the appendix. The ALR has a huge database of paintings reported missing or stolen around the world, and anyone purchasing a painting or questioning the provenance of a painting can check it against ALR's database. Along with the certificate came the advice from one of ALR's researchers to continue looking for provenance of the painting and to consider the work of Eugene Spiro, a degenerate artist, quote unquote, from Poland working in Paris at that time. Spiro, a Jew, escaped to New York just as the Nazis arrived in 1940. Now, while I doubt Spiro is the artist of The Girl in Red, he is yet another candidate for the painting's artist in the ongoing journey of The Girl in Red, a journey that seems to have a life of its own. Hurrah, huzzah. The quote on the slide by the great novelist W.G. Sebald, sums up for me my obsessive journey with the girl in red. One line in the quote is key. The more difficult it gets, the more intrigued you become. When mere difficulty becomes virtual impossibility, as in my journey with the girl in red, the intrigue grows exponentially. And that is my portrait in red, a Paris obsession. Footnote. I love footnotes, but decided early on not to have footnotes in my book. They're too academic. So I'll put one here. There is a surprise at the end of the book, but not one that you might expect. Remember that although it's the journey that counts in life and in art, not just the destination is very important. It's just not the destination you thought it would be. The end. I made it. Woo! I I didn't know if my voice would survive.
You made it.
And
Thanks, John.
I forgot to bring a glass of water to my desk, and I didn't want to get up in the middle of the PowerPoint to go get one. Has anyone ever done that in a PowerPoint? Get up in the middle and go get a glass of water and come back? I guess you could do that.
I was forced to once because of a truly terrible coughing fit.
Oh, and that's what I was worried that I would have a coughing fit, but I just had a hoarse voice that came and went. I hope I was clear enough.
No, you made it. Thank you so much, John. That was fantastic. As those of you who have heard John speak before, and those of you who have just heard him for the first time now, I think all are getting an idea of just your curiosity, John, and your expansiveness, and that comes through, and for me at least, in everything that you do, and in this book as well. Um, Really, really terrific. I've learned so much and feel so inspired, and I hope that all of you have too. And of course, that you get John's beautiful, beautiful book. I'm going to put the discount code up in just a moment here. You can buy it from the discount code is for purchases directly from the press, from Heyday Press in Berkeley. So that you'll have more information. That code will take you to the press's website. In the US, there's also bookshop.org, which is a great supporter of local bookstores like Mrs. Dalloway's in Berkeley near John, and bookstores across the United States. And of course, that other guy that we all know about as well. But we obviously encourage you to support Heyday and support independent bookstores. So let me get that for you. And so again, thank you so much, everyone. We're going to take Q&A in just a moment with John. And love to have you support John by getting his book, A Paris Obsession. And also, if you're interested in learning more about this fascinating history of the stolen art from across France and Europe, we invite you to get one of those last couple of places that remain for our tour, Art and Resistance in World War II, Paris and Champagne. We're working with another author for that, Bryn Turnbull, reading her terrific book, as well as Irène Nemirovsky's Suite Française. We're reading it in English translation. So we'll have all that information from you. And again, we'll have a follow-up email to everyone who's registered with more information about, with the recording of this presentation, more information about John, his work in both literature and music, and some further resources for you. So thanks so much, everyone. Let's turn off the recording now and open it up for Q&A.